So today we've got a story for you where trade wars, mountains of actual garbage, and some seriously cutting-edge AI all collide. We're going to see how one company built a digital shield to solve a massive geopolitical crisis, not with a bunch of diplomats, but with some surprisingly down-to-earth tech. Okay, let's just dive right in. The core problem was something they called the Great Lakes Trash War. And yeah, it was a real, full-blown flashpoint between the US and Canada. And the commodity at the center of it all? Literally garbage. We're talking millions of tons of it. This wasn't just some local recycling issue. It got so bad that it actually became a matter of national security, with massive tariffs being slapped on, well, trash.
And just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about here, that's how much Canadian solid waste, mostly from Ontario, was getting trucked over the Ambassador Bridge and dumped into Michigan landfills every single year. It was so much that it made up over 14% of all the waste disposed of in the entire state. So you can imagine, when that border started to become a problem, it threatened to create a genuine crisis.
But right as the political mess was getting worse, this really innovative solution started to take shape. A company called 905 Wood came along with a totally radical idea. They looked at that mountain of trash and didn't see garbage. They saw an untapped resource. They basically proposed a huge shift in thinking. What if we stopped treating waste like a problem and started treating it like a stream of valuable data? And the analogy they use for this is it's perfect. Think about a giant oil refinery, right? It takes in messy, raw crude oil and processes it into super valuable things like jet fuel. Well, their digital refinery does the exact same thing, but its input is a dumpster full of busted 2x4s and sawdust. It takes this chaotic, raw stuff and refines it into a clean, standardized, and incredibly valuable digital asset. And the slide right here, it just brilliantly lays out the change. The old way was pure analog chaos, paper tickets with coffee stains, legal liabilities, total regulatory confusion. The 905 Wood way completely flips that. It turns a physical problem that costs you money into a verifiable digital asset that makes you money. And it's all backed by rock-solid cryptographic proof. All right, so let's move on and see how this thing actually works in the real world. This workflow is what they call the Sentient Bridge. It's the tech that connects a messy, dirty demolition site to the super clean, high-tech world of the bioeconomy. The key here really is speed and total automation. It all kicks off with something simple. A client just texts a photo of their woodpile on WhatsApp and boom, they get an instant request for quote. Then, right there on site, AI verification, automated financial calculations, it all happens seamlessly and creates this legally binding digital product passport in a flash. And this brings us to a really fascinating and honestly a deeply counterintuitive choice they made. To do this critical industrial-grade verification job, they don't use some $5,000 rugged scanner. Nope, they use a regular old smartphone you can buy at the store. So why on earth would you trust a consumer phone with something as serious as hazardous waste classification? Well, the answer isn't about the brand, it's about the silicon. It's about the chip inside. They went with the Google Pixel 10 Pro specifically because its custom Tensor G5 chip is designed for sustained heavy-duty work. This means it can run these complex AI models right on the device, with no internet connection for a full 8-hour shift in the blazing summer heat without overheating. That kind of reliability is absolutely everything. But here's the truly clever part. The system is actually built to distrust its own eyes. They call this solving the visual fallacy, which is the fact that hazardous wood, the kind treated with arsenic, can look exactly the same as perfectly clean wood to a camera. So the AI uses sensor fusion. It cross-references the visual scan with audio from the driver. If the camera sees clean wood, but the driver mentions the word deck in a voice note, the audio instantly overrides the visual and flags the entire load. It's just a brilliant digital safety net. Okay, so now we get to the real masterstroke. We've seen how they capture all this data with incredible precision right at the source. But the most brilliantly pragmatic part of this whole thing is how that data is delivered, the final output. And here is the big twist. In this age of slick, beautiful software design, animated dashboards, fancy dark modes, 905 Wood's most important product, the thing that acts as their impenetrable legal shield, is an intentionally, unapologetically ugly PDF. They have this design philosophy called industrial legibility, and it's genius because they threw modern design completely out the window.
They were thinking about the real-world conditions where this document gets used. We're talking stark black and white, huge blocky fonts, thick borders. It's designed so you can read it perfectly in the glaring sun, or if it's printed on a crappy office printer, or even sent through a 30-year-old fax machine. This Brutalist PDF, this is the ultimate digital shield. It serves as a complete 9-point certificate of origin with all the data required by international trade law. It takes all that cryptographic proof, the GPS data, the AI scans, even the legal citations from Ontario's OREG 347, and presents it with zero ambiguity. It mathematically proves right there on the spot that the load is 100% Canadian wood, which is exactly what you need to defeat the very tariffs that started this whole mess. So let's look at the payoff. The system gives them this impenetrable legal armor. But how does it actually turn a pile of scrap wood, basically dust, into digital gold? How do you transform a financial liability into a whole new revenue stream? Well, first, you have to remember the starting point. In Ontario, there's this thing called the Circle Levy. It's a flat penalty. Businesses have to pay $60 for every single ton of wood waste they send to a landfill. It's a pure cost, a straight-up liability on their balance sheet. And this is the magic trick, because the digital refinery creates a flawless, undeniable, cryptographic record that proves a specific ton of wood was diverted from a landfill. The system can then legally create a globally recognized carbon asset. It's called a CO2 removal certificate, or a CRC. And the math on this is really cool. For every dry ton of wood they process and divert, they can generate certificates for about 3/4 of a ton of CO2 equivalent. And these certificates? They're in super high demand from big corporations around the world that need to offset their carbon emissions, which makes them a really valuable commodity. So here's the bottom line, all laid out on one slide. This system uses AI and crypto proof to take a physical liability that costs you $60 a ton and transforms it into a verifiable digital asset that generates brand new revenue. It's a total financial flip, and it's all powered by data. And that really brings us to our final thought here. This whole system, from a consumer smartphone all the way to a fax-ready PDF, is just a masterclass in pragmatic, reality-first engineering. It solved this huge, complex problem not by trying to wish away the messy details, but by embracing them. And it kind of makes you wonder, right? What other huge, intractable problems out there are just waiting for a dose of that kind of industrial legibility?